Welcome back to another video. Joe Sky here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how self-discipline can help you overcome addiction. So self-discipline is actually something that I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. And what it is the ability to control one's feelings and overcome one's weakness. So this is obviously kind of a big thing. I think a lot of people need self-discipline in this society. So now that you know what self-discipline is, thing is, let's put it into example. Let's say you see a bunch of treats. Let's say you see a bunch of like desserts. You're probably thinking, "Oh my goodness, I want to eat those, right? I want those and everything, right?" Well, with self-discipline, what's happening here is you're holding yourself from doing something for short-term enjoyment. Because a lot of people are doing things for short-term pleasure. With self-discipline, you're kind of holding yourself. So you now that you know how it would work with something like eating desserts and candy, like holding yourself right because you're disciplined, how would it work with addiction? Let's say you're addicted to your smartphone, scrolling. Well, what you would do is you would realize this is a short-term pleasure. So instead of doing something like going on your phone until 4 a.m., you would realize that it's not really worth doing and it's not something that is long term. With self discipline, you realize that short term pleasures aren't as rewarding. So basically, things like drinking and smoking, they're not that big of a deal, right? Because obviously, you realize that it's just short term pleasure. It doesn't mean much to you because long term is what you're focused on. So, how would you build self discipline, right? Which is something, in my opinion, truly powerful. You could simply build it by simply making goals and small steps to get to your goals. So you don't feel bored or intimidated. Now, most people are scrolling on their phones, for example. You're scrolling your phone because you're bored. But when you start to say, like, okay, long term, I want to build this amount of money in my portfolio, I want to do this sort of thing, and you end up working towards it, right? So you end up making maybe a YouTube channel or a business, and you got goals. You make like little goals, so 1,000 subs, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, then a million. You make smaller goals, right? When you do that, what's happening is you don't have time to scroll on your phone. What happens is you're not really looking at short-term pleasures because you're so busy thinking of doing something that's long-term. Now, how do you get yourself to get into long term pleasure instead of short term pleasure, right? And short term pleasure things like addictions like scrolling your phone, video games constantly, um, smoking, drinking, drugs, anything. I mean, these days there's so many things, right? You do that by thinking of the thing that's long term and you write things down, you're most likely prolonged to do it. So when you look at your goals, when you look at something that you want to do, um, maybe you're excited to do something like you want to travel, but you need a lot of money, so you want to work on a way to build a money pool, right? To get a bunch of money in. So that's your goal. You start planning, you start working on it, and you make little goals. Well, what you can do is you're going to focus on that and you're going to realize that's what I want. That is a long term pleasure. And when you get interested in doing a long term pleasure, the short term pleasures aren't going to mean anything, right? What's the point of smoking when you truly from within, right? You want to travel, you want to, do things like that instead. Um, so when you look at that, you're like, who cares about short-term pleasures? So how do you go from short-term to long-term pleasures? How do you go from like not caring about these little things, these little addictions or phone scrolling by constantly, you make a plan and you constantly work on it and you make little goals to keep yourself attached to it. So then you are on the road to long-term pleasure, and that's how you would shift your mentality from that. So when it comes to an addiction, for example, let's say you have a plan. Your plan is to stop scrolling late. Well, you're probably going to write down why you want to stop scrolling, right? You're going to become more aware of it. So every time you're going to scroll, or every time you make the habit of scrolling, or maybe like I said, at nighttime you just got nothing better to do, you want to scroll. What you're going to do is you're going to be aware of it, and you're going to think to yourself, what's the point of doing it? What's it going to do for me long term? Right? Like it's pointless. You can do it anytime. You become aware of it. And if you want to know more about awareness, I got another video. You guys can go ahead and check that out. But when it comes to self discipline, you are disciplining yourself. You are pretty much saying this thing is, I don't want it. I don't want the short term pleasure. I'm all about the long term. So self discipline is holding yourself and not going into a short term pleasure. It's overcoming your weakness, overcoming just that feeling of, I want to eat the sugar, I want to eat the donuts, I want to eat all that. You're saying, no, it's not worth it. You're aware that it is addicting, you're aware that it's bad for your body, etc., etc. And you say no and you move on towards something else. So, how can self discipline overcome your addiction or help you? How I want to say, with it, you realize that you change your mentality from that short-term pleasure or addiction and say long-term, this is what I want to do in my life. I don't want to keep drinking, etc. I don't want to keep doing this. I want to do this thing. I want to work towards it. So then now when you have a purpose of doing something, your mind switches to that thing. You're focused on that thing. You're working on that thing. So I hope this video helped you out. If you want more, let me know. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and by all means, comment down below anything. Thank you all. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And this video should truly help you out. If it did, let me know. Thank you.